So yeah, didn't expect to be in here so soon, but here we are. So all this happened because a stupid little hose, obviously the vertical cuts are from me getting the hose off, but you can still make out the horizontal crack that where the hose split and spilled out all the coolant. So that's fantastic. So that happened, car lost all the coolant, while I happened to be like moderate heavy throttle, and that prompted the head gasket to do that. So yeah, then water and oil started getting all up in there, and yeah, car started sounding like a Subaru. And coincidentally, that's what I was racing, a Subaru. Not even like a serious race or anything, just like a friendly little, like, head into my buddy's shop and get there, and we're like, why does it sound like a Subaru? The Subaru already left. We had to tow the car back home and got it here, and then my OCD said, we're not sleeping today. So I proceeded to stay up till about 1 a.m. to get to this point. We took the cylinder head to the machine shop this morning, and we already have it back. It's nice and resurfaced and ready to go. And so to put it all back together, our friends at Concept Z Performance really hooked us up and got this to us next day, like faster than next day, because I ordered it yesterday afternoon and it already got here. ARP head studs, as well as a brand new OEM Nissan head gasket. And then a Cometic intake manifold gasket. And we also ordered an OEM exhaust manifold gasket, but that one's not here yet. But it's not too big a deal because the original exhaust gasket still looks like it's in decent shape. So might still be able to get this thing back together today. So what we got left to do now is basically prep the block for the new head gasket and cylinder head. And to do that, my preferred method of doing this, obviously there's all kinds of information on the internet, however, which way your grandpa's uncle's dad told you how to do this. I like sticking with just a razor blade and then some sandpaper on like a metal block, something like that. Some people like using those little like Rolock discs with an air tool. I don't like using those because those actually can take off material if you're not careful. And I just think it's too small of a surface to keep this entire plane flat. So I don't like using those little discs. They are definitely faster. And I mean, if you're building something like a Buick LeSabre or whatever the crap, then yeah, fine, go for it. It's not gonna matter. But on something a little more refined, you wanna be a little more careful and take your time. So we're gonna scrape all this old gasket material away with this. You just wanna be careful not to gouge anything. And then also, what I try to do is to try and keep any of the gasket junk from going into, at least from going into the oil passages. The coolant passages, probably not too big of a deal. I like to at least try to keep it from going in the oil, even though we'll definitely get some new oil in there before we get it running, but pretty satisfying. Okay, so we got everything all nice and scraped up, nice and smooth. So now we're gonna hit it with some 220 grit, because that's what I had laying around. I've heard you can go as low as like 100 grit, but probably shouldn't go lower than that. You can go as high as you want, I guess. I mean, I've never done it past like 320 really. But you just want to get all the rest of the gasket junk off of this. So just keep it flat. Make sure you get a piece of sandpaper that covers like the whole width at least. You can see we're even starting to get some of the machining marks back. Before, after. So now I'll just give the whole thing a nice even pass. Shouldn't take more than like 5 or 10 minutes. Okay, now we got everything nice and cleaned up. It's time to spray it with brake cleaner. Okay, got some brake cleaner, some shop towels, and basically you just want to drown the thing in brake cleaner and keep wiping the surface until your rag comes out clean. Okay, that only took like 6 rags, but once you rub everything down and you're not getting any residue left on the rag, then it's pretty much clean. It's dry and it's straight. That's all you need. Now we can start getting the cylinder head ready to come back on and probably just put our head gasket in place. Try not to touch it as much as possible. And we don't have any dowel pins. Okay, there's one stuck in the head and that was it. I've run into this before where RBs seem to only have one dowel pin. I don't know what the deal is with that because it has a location for another one, but I guess they didn't think it was necessary. All right, got the exhaust manifold all tightened down and now we give this thing the brake clean treatment. Okay, cylinder head's all clean, and before we attempt to even drop it on the block, we need to make sure that the pistons and valves are not gonna have any issues. So the best thing to do is put your number 1 back at top dead center. About right there. Oh, and I found an extra little dowel thingy, because I happen to have a whole other engine sitting over here. Both dowels just makes me feel better. Probably not necessary. I mean, obviously not necessary if it was actually running and Nissan made it that way, but whatever. Block is at top dead center. Now we need to make sure the cams are also at top dead center. So on most Nissans, your cams, when your number 1 cylinder is at top dead center, your intake cam lobe or your cam lobes point outward away from each other. So we need to turn these guys to right there. Right there. So number 1 cylinder, cam lobes away from each other. And that's pretty much it. Just make sure there's no debris of any kind anywhere. Wide stance, lift with your legs, blah, blah, blah. Try not to smash the gasket by dropping the head on it. That part's not fun. I'd rather do that outside of the car. Probably could do it with like a cherry picker too, but it's like outside somewhere and I don't want to move everything around to get it in here, so. Okay, so now we are ready for head studs. Okay, now we got our cylinder head in place and we're ready to fasten it down. And so we're gonna show you exactly how you're supposed to install these, because online there's just all kinds of videos and they're all spewing conflicting information. I literally called ARP and asked them specifically what you're supposed to do with the lube and torque specs and everything. So with regards to the RB series of engines and installing ARP head studs, you use their Ultra Torque lubricant. That's it, not motor oil, not peanut butter, not whatever your grandpa told you. Use this. If you don't have it, buy some. If you bought used head studs that didn't come with it, just they sell this stuff separately. You apply this to both threads and then you put your head stud in the block, tighten it down, and you do not use an Allen key to crank it all the way down. You just spin it by hand until, if it happens to touch the bottom of the block, then back it off a half a turn. You do not want these bottoming out, and only hand tight, not, you know, don't apply any sort of like force to it. And then when you put the washer and the nut, you do not put lube on the bottom face of the washer, only on the top surface between the nut and the washer, and that's it. And when you apply, there's also the instructions in here. Each one, depending on your engine, is going to be different, the value that it tells you. But you fasten it in 3 equal steps to 80 foot-pounds. And you have to use their lubricant to follow these instructions of 80 foot-pounds. And I also think it's kind of funny that they say 3 equal steps to 80 because 80 is not really divisible by 3. But we're gonna do like 27, 54, and 80, I guess. Before that, obviously you wanna make sure your threads have been cleaned. We already did that, already chased them with the tap, blew them out, make sure there's no oil, water, whatever in there. So we can go ahead and start installing everything. All right, so we're gonna use one of these fancy little sponge brushes because these actually work really good for this and kind of minimizes you getting dirty, but you can use whatever you want. I used to just use my hands. This works really well. So we're just gonna take each stud and get a nice even coat on there. Like that. And then drop them in. And rinse and repeat 14 times. All right, so now we tighten all these down. Like I said, hand tight, not cranked down, not bottomed out either. You happen to hit the bottom of the threads without like cranking on it, then back it off half a turn and just repeat another 14 times. Okay, so like right there we hit bottom, so I want to back it off. That's what you want. All right, we got all the head studs ready to go. Now we're ready for the washers. And this is still gonna be messy. Ha, made it. Okay, so I found these long tweezers that are like absolutely perfect for this. So now we just apply the grease, get it all over our fingers, grab with the tweezers, and drop it in. And once again, repeat like 14 times. Now for the last part. And we probably need a special socket for this, and I think I actually still have mine from like 10 years ago. Yeah. So for the RB25 half-inch studs, or 7/16 or whatever, you need a half-inch 12-point deep socket. And I bought this like 10 years ago. Literally had to drive across town to the Sears to get this Craftsman socket because they were the only ones that had a freaking 12 or half-inch 12-point socket. And the first time my RB25 blew in my S14, and I still have it. All right, so same idea. We're just lubing the bottom of the washer or the nut. And then trying not to drop that one also. And then again, rinse and repeat 14 times. Okay, so we're almost ready to torque everything down. I have everything hand tight right now, and I noticed on some of the studs, there's like pretty much no resistance when I was putting the stud in. So when I tightened the nut down, even by hand, it bottomed out the stud. So what I'm doing now is just going back, and with my socket in place, I'm just holding the nut from turning. And then you put the Allen key in, and then, because you can see right there where it was, it's bottomed out, like it's not turning anymore. So what I'm doing is going back and taking out that half turn and making sure that nut is still tightened all the way, or at least contacting, like right there. So that way our stud isn't bottomed out, and I've just been repeating that on every stud so far. So right there, nut is tightened down all the way. So we hold it, see our stud was bottomed out again, and just take out that half turn. And make sure the nut is still tight. All right, now we're ready to torque everything down. And to do this, grab your favorite clicky boy and set it to 27 foot-pounds. And then we're gonna give everything a first pass in the manufacturer specified torque sequence. So for this part, you want to follow the pattern that the factory service manual outlines, but you're going to use the torque spec that ARP outlines. So your shape is pretty much the same on all cylinder heads. You're basically working from your center outward. So like that. And then you're gonna repeat that 3 times because the ARP outlines 3 equal steps to 80 foot-pounds. Gonna give it our first pass. So we want to start in the middle one. You can see there's 1, 2, 3 on this side, 1, 2, 3 on that side. So this is our center position. And there's our 27. 27 again. And also when you're doing this, you want to try and hit that torque spec when it clicks in one sweep. You don't want to like be, you know, yanking on it. You want to make sure it's nice, smooth, and consistent. And also you want to use the shortest extension you can get away with. In this case, it's just 1/2 inch to 3/8 adapter. All right. So that's the 27 pass. Now we go up to 54. So 50, 1, 2, 3, 4. Once again, repeat the same torque sequence. You can see the clicks get louder and also tougher to turn. All right, last one at 80 foot-pounds. 80. Should add, this really sucks with the engine in the car. Like on the one hand, you can get better leverage because like on an engine stand it sucks also because the engine doesn't weigh that much compared to the car and you're having to like fight to keep it in place. Being hunched over really is taking a toll on my back. All right, that's the last one. All right, so head is fully torqued down. Everything went pretty good, felt nice and consistent. A couple little slips, which are a little scary, but seemed to go fine. So time to move on to whatever else is next. All right, head is fully secured and permanently in place. Now we can move on to, I guess, the timing set. Boy, is that an issue. So I've just learned that there's no service manual in English for R34s. There's like the basic like owner's manual, but there's no like workshop manual, like the one that actually tells you like how to take the engine apart and put it back together and all that junk. And I just spent the better part of like a couple hours trying to figure out why nobody has fixed this. And I found one thread on an ancient thing called a forum from like 2001 of like some dude sharing like a sketchy link to his website where he happens to actually have the Japanese version of the R34 manual hosted. So I looked through that manual and I found the part that pertains to the RB25 Neo. And the thing that I was concerned about is that the VCT gear on the Neo is different than the R33. Because if you notice, the Neo has an Allen key plug thing on the front of the gear. And when you remove this one, you have an Allen bolt holding the gear to the cam. And that's different than the R33 version. And so I looked at the R33 version and it calls for 90 to 97 foot-pounds on this bolt. The bolt, I don't know if they're the same thread pitch, but I want to say the R33 one is a little bigger, which is the main reason I was concerned. So I found the manual and I found the part that pertains to this, which I'll, I guess, put here somewhere. And I'll probably also link it down below in case you guys want to check the sketchy website out. It seems fine. It's just a directory of all the service manual chapters and stuff like that. But The diagram for the VCT, for the cam stuff, for the Neo, states that the torque spec for this bolt is 108 to 118 Newton meters. Yeah, 108 to 118 Newton meters, which, according to my handy clicky boy here, 111 Newton meters, which is between the 108 and 118, translates to about 82 foot-pounds. So that's a difference of about 10 foot-pounds between the R33 version and the R34 version. So that's crucial information. Like, if you trusted the R33 one, you might snap the stupid bolt off in the cam and then ruin your whole freaking month. So we are gonna move forward based on that information and start putting this stuff back together. All right, so the first thing that I think we're supposed to put back on is the timing cover. Rear timing cover anyway. This is 410 mils. Okay. And then gears, I guess. So obviously the gears are keyed to only go on one way. And you line up that extra little hole with the dowel that's on the exhaust cam and put on your little plate. These, I think these were a weird size too. They're like 11 mil, I think, or something. And then our intake cam. Again, this one also has a similar setup. There's a dowel on the camshaft and there's a slot on the inside of the cam gear. So obviously line those two up with each other. So you can see it seats down a little more. So you push it, it's sitting, just keep spinning. So right there. So now we torque these to, like I said, 82-ish foot-pounds, and these four are a lot lower. For some reason, it almost makes me question if I converted the number correctly, but these ones say 14 Newton meters, which seems really low. That's like hand tight, I think. Yeah, it doesn't even go that low. The lowest this torque wrench goes is 33.9 Newton meters. So hand tight, I guess. But as far as this one does need to be 82. All right, so we need to torque that bolt down, and obviously the camshaft isn't attached to anything, so it's gonna spin. So we need to hold it with a crescent wrench, I guess, because that's the only thing I have that fits over this. There's like square faces on the camshaft itself, so that's what you're trying to hold on to. So this is a 10 millimeter Allen. And there we are. Alrighty, that's good enough. Tensioner and idler pulley. And these, they look pretty new. The car came with the sticker that says when they did the timing belt last time, but I can't really make out what it says. So I'm pretty sure that's an R. So this kanji means year, this one means month, and this one means day. So it was like the 10th of February, or the 2nd of October. But their years are different. They're based on the current reigning emperor. So R is the current era, which is Reiwa. But I don't know what the hell number that is. Because Reiwa 1 was like 2020, I think. I don't know, fairly recent. One thing I didn't like is that the timing belt that they used is like their AutoZone Duralast brand. It says it's not a Nissan belt, Mitsubishi. Not even Mitsubishi, just Mitsubishi. Yeah, I think we're gonna go with the factory belt. Luckily, I have a nice little stock of factory parts here. Time to open a fresh belt. And it comes with a nice new little sticker. This will help too because the markings are obviously more clear and obvious. So, yeah. Nissan Bando SUTS. Yeah, so hopefully if we did everything right, all the markings should line up. First we need to get our tensioners and stuff in place. So the idler just goes bolted on right here somewhere. And then there's like a little peg on the block back here. That's to hold the little springy boy here. So you just have to make sure that leg of the spring sits on top of that peg. Put the washers and nut back on. All right, so one of the easiest mistakes you can make when doing this, and I've actually seen a handful of my friends do this. It's very stupid when they realize they did it because it's very obvious how you're supposed to do this, but they put the belt on backwards and the marks are slightly different and then the car will run weird. It'll still run, luckily it won't break anything, but yeah, the belt has arrows telling you which way it's supposed to face. So make sure, you know, you can read the letters. The belt goes like that way. And then your marks should correspond with the marks on the pulley. And then there's also marks on the backing plate here. So all your stuff should line up. And likewise on this side, you have your mark on the gear, you have your mark on the backing plate, and then you have your mark on the belt. All three of these need to line up for the engine to be timed correctly. So we need to get our crescent wrench. So I'm just gonna turn this gear until it lines up with the backing plate first. All right, so our exhaust gear is a little off, so we're gonna spin it around town. Right there. And then same thing with the intake gear. So now you'll see if we put our belt back in place, this mark should line up right there. And if we did it right, the other mark will also line up over here. See? So that is how you time an RB engine. And then now you just gotta line up. There's another mark on the crank pulley that you have to line up with the bottom mark of the belt down here. So all three of those have to line up. And then you can tension the tensioner, and then we can try and spin it around, see if anything is angry with each other. A little pro tip, this bottom timing mark for the crank gear, obviously it's on the bottom of the belt, which from our position up here, we have no freaking clue where it is. So a little tip is to take a Sharpie and mark where that line is on the inside of the belt so you can more easily line it up. The marking on the crank pulley is also kind of hard to see, but it sticks off to the right a little bit, so you should be able to see it. I also marked it with the Sharpie too. Yep, this is every bit as annoying as I remember. So last little bit, make sure your belt is centered on the gears. Make sure it's nice and flush with the bottom crank pulley. And then, this next part's another part that a lot of guys do incorrectly. So the tensioner, you apply tension with this Allen key. It has like this little slot in the front of the tensioner for you to twist up and down. And so what a lot of guys will do is they'll think that you have to like crank this down. So like you can actually overstretch the belt. If you keep cranking this, it will like pivot and get stuck the other way. And then these two belts will come concerningly close together. They won't hit, but it'll be like really overstretching the belt. And if you do that, my first RB that I ever had actually came that way. Like I got it running and this was so tight that the entire belt system was making like a whining noise, almost like a supercharger. And so the correct way to do this, again, we have the Japanese service manual. The correct way to do this is to apply tension with this hand while checking the belt for deflection. So you push down on this and you twist this section. And so like if we don't apply any tension, you can see we could twist the belt almost a full quarter turn, or yeah, quarter turn. And so you want less than that tension, and you want like 1/8 of a turn. So like about there. So the tricky part is you have to do this while applying tension, and then when you figure out a good spot, then you have to tighten all this down. So it's kind of tricky to do all that at once, but that's how you're supposed to do it. Okay, so now everything's mechanically installed. So now's the scary part. You need to try and turn the engine a couple times, see if everything seems like it's spinning smoothly and like it should. Obviously, if there's any like resistance or like straight up like it stops on anything, then huge red flag, abort mission, run away, light it on fire, make an insurance claim, yada yada. So let's see if it makes some noises. So turn the crank, now it's turning everything. Another thing we can check while we're spinning is if we want to verify that our crank timing marker is in fact lined up, which we can see right here. We can now see our line on the belt clearly, and we can see the mark on the gear. So those are lined up. Everything here's lined up. The one over here is already off, but you want to listen for those kinds of noises. That's a good sign. All right, and we are back to top dead center. That's full rotation or full combustion cycle, and so far so good. So that's pretty much the most important part. Everything else we can just start slapping back together and hopefully it runs. Okay, so we got that whole mess behind us. We drove all the way out here to Tempe Town Lake. Been driving for like 30 minutes or so. The car's been doing fine. It's holding temp good. Before, it was having a little bit of a breakup, like a misfire at high RPM, but I think that's just because the spark plugs were fouled. So got new spark plugs in there, and it's running pretty good. Kind of upset about the whole thing about how it happened, because like it never seemed like it overheated to me. So I was just upset that like it blew the head gasket in that short amount of time. But now having seen the inside of the engine, I don't think it ever overheated at all. I think the issue was that the head gasket was corroded from water having been used as coolant for too long, and the head gasket was weak, and under high boost that blew out the head gasket. And that path between the combustion chamber and the coolant passages, I think that's what blew the heater hose. So not that the heater hose blew and then the engine overheated and then that caused the head gasket to blow. I think it was the other way around. I think combustion pressure got into the coolant system, and that's what blew the heater hose, spilling all the coolant out, or water. Because another piece of evidence to support that is that when I took the head to go get resurfaced, it actually pretty much didn't even need to be resurfaced. The guy said he took like maybe 5 thousandths off of it, and it was perfectly cleaned up. So usually when the head gets overheated, it usually needs to be milled a little more than that. I mean, 5 thousandths was just like a preliminary pass, and he was like, oh, well, it's good now. So that kind of supports the fact that the engine never actually overheated. But I mean, regardless, what happened happened. It's fixed now. It starts perfectly fine. It's just like it used to, so it's better than it was before, at least, because now like we did all the preliminary maintenance, like the timing belt, spark plugs, oil change, coolant now too. So now it should be good to drive for the long term. So still upset that it happened like so soon after we just got the car, but whatever, it's behind us now. Gotta always do your best, right? So thanks for watching, and see you guys next time.